Within the hour, Devon stood before the imposing entrance of Stellar Dynamics headquarters, his eyes fixed on the faint glow emanating from behind the tinted glass. Security guards eyed him with suspicion, but he ignored them, focusing his full attention on breaching the building's encrypted network. Using a portable signal jammer, he neutralized the nearest security cameras, then walked casually past the double doors, their sophisticated locking mechanisms no match for a seasoned hacker. In the sterile white corridors, he bypassed laser grids and pressure-sensitive panels, finally reaching the server room where raw power lay dormant. He sat before a bank of blinking lights and punched in a sequence of commands, bypassing firewalls with practiced ease. Within minutes, he had access to the company's central operating system. Now he needed to upload his own code to modify the defensive grid's targeting protocols. But he was not alone. Across the city, Helena received an alert that someone had penetrated Stellar Dynamics' mainframe. Frowning, she strode to the security monitor, her gaze settling on the unknown intruder. Through the lens, she saw a man rummage through the server racks, oblivious to the armed security guard closing in on him. A tense game of cat and mouse ensued, punctuated by the hum of cooling fans and the soft click of keyboards. Helena watched, intrigued, as the man skillfully avoided her security team, utilizing tactics she hadn't seen since her days at MIT. His movements were economical, almost graceful, belying a deep understanding of computer systems. Finally, he reached a console and began uploading data. Seizing the opportunity, the guard closed in, but Devon was ready. With a swift kick, he sent the keyboard flying, then disarmed the guard in a single fluid motion. Startled by his strength, the guard drew his sidearm, but Devon was faster. In a move straight out of a martial arts film, he snatched the gun and tossed it aside. "Who are you?" demanded the guard, his voice laced with disbelief. "Someone who can help you," said Devon, his voice raspy from disuse. "What are you doing here?" "Fixing your mistakes," he replied cryptically, returning to the console. With a final keystroke, he completed his upload, then turned to face the stunned guard. "I need you to get out of here," he said, gesturing toward the door. "This isn't over," the guard muttered, drawing his weapon again. But Devon was prepared. Disarming him once more, he swiftly bound the guard's hands behind his back with the discarded network cable. Then, with a swift kick, he sent the unconscious body crashing to the floor. Glancing at the clock, he knew he'd used valuable time. Now he had to reach the roof and send a message to the stars. Outside, Helena watched with growing admiration as the man danced through her security measures, his confidence bordering on arrogance. Who was he, and why was he determined to alter her company's most critical project? Suddenly he paused, staring intently at one of the monitors. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Good," he murmured. "It's almost time." On the observation deck, Nix's violet eyes scanned the horizon, searching for signs of Earth's defenses activating. So far, nothing. The cloaking field around the ship flickered, hiding it from ordinary sensors, but revealing the city below with chilling clarity. Captain Joran would be pleased with the progress report she would deliver, the one she was mandated to send if the humans failed to demonstrate advanced capability. But what if they did? The thought, unorthodox as it was, had crossed her mind. The humans were unpredictable, capable of brilliant innovations that often went unused due to internal conflicts. Yet their ingenuity was undeniable. As she continued her surveillance, a faint pulsing light caught her attention. At first, she dismissed it as a malfunction in her visual sensors, but the light grew steadily brighter, tracing a path across the sky that was both familiar and terrifying. Hope surged through Helena as she recognized the telltale pulses of the orbital defense grid. They were engaging. But when she looked to the heavens, her jaw dropped in disbelief. Instead of the usual silent, unseen defense, the satellites blazed with an otherworldly light, forming a shield of pure energy. It was beautiful and deadly, simultaneously a work of art and a weapon of mass destruction. From her vantage point, Nix could see the defensive satellites merging into a single entity, their combined energy forming a barrier that stretched across half the planet. Even through the cloak, she could feel the energy surge and knew that any ship attempting to penetrate it would be obliterated. The sight left her stunned, violating all the tactical assumptions she'd learned in the Zenthari military. Her initial surprise gave way to wonder, then to a dawning realization of the magnitude of the event she was witnessing. She had stumbled upon a pivotal moment in Earth's history, a testament to the species' resilience and potential. What she saw wasn't just a defensive display, it was a glimpse into the future of Earth and possibly the future of the entire galaxy. As the defense grid activated, sending a pulsating energy wave across the planet, Nyx knew she had to make a decision that would have profound consequences. Her duty was to her empire, but should she, risk the wrath of an energized planet? Suddenly, the pulsing light intensified, flaring into a brilliant white that blotted out everything. Then just as abruptly, it ceased. Silence descended once more, broken only by the soft hum of machinery. When the light returned, the satellites were still there, but they were different. Instead of being a jumbled mess of activated defenses, they were arranged in a precise, almost beautiful pattern. It was a formation that spoke of intelligence, coordination, and most importantly, peace. Nyx blinked, unsure of what she was seeing. Was this some kind of trick? A ploy to lull her into a false sense of security? But as she watched, the satellites began to move, not in the chaotic flurry of battle, but in a graceful, synchronized dance. They rotated, shifted positions, almost as if they were communicating with each other. Then, one of the satellites detached from the group and began to descend. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if it were making a grand entrance. Nyx watched, mesmerized, as it descended lower and lower until it was just a speck in the vast expanse of the sky. But even at that distance, she could see the markings on its hull clearly now. They were not the markings of a warship or a scout ship, but the markings of an ambassadorial vessel. The truth of the situation hit Nyx like a physical blow. She wasn't watching a defense display. She wasn't even observing an interstellar battle. She was witnessing a diplomatic exchange. But how could this be? How could these primitive humans with their rudimentary technology manage to send such a clear and powerful message to an interstellar empire? Suddenly it hit her. This wasn't just a message to the Zenthari. It was a message to the entire galaxy. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They were declaring themselves to the universe. They were saying, in no uncertain terms, that they were here, they were capable, and they were not to be trifled with. As the ambassadorial ship continued its descent, Nyx knew she had to act quickly. If she didn't get word of this development to the Zenthari Council, she would be in serious trouble. But how could she convey the significance of what she was seeing? How could she explain the implications of a new player in the galactic arena? She reached for her comm unit and began to transmit. To the Zenithar Council, this is Nyx reporting an emergency situation. I have visual confirmation of the Earth's defensive capabilities. I repeat, the humans have demonstrated advanced defensive capabilities. Further observation is required. Requesting immediate transport back to base. As Nyx transmitted her report, she couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. She had done her duty, but she couldn't help but wonder about the future. The humans had shown incredible potential today, but what would they be capable of tomorrow? Could they become a threat to the Zenithari Empire or to the entire galaxy? Only time would tell, and Nyx knew that she might not be around to see it. But as she prepared for her return to the Zenithari, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. She had witnessed something truly special, and she couldn't wait to share it with her people. The galaxy was changing, and she was a part of it. Helena was lost in the labyrinthine world of contingency plans when her security chief interrupted her train of thought. "Ma'am, there's a man at the front desk claiming he can fix our satellite problem. Security wants to remove him, but he's providing technical specifications that match our classified systems." Helena looked up from her reports, intrigued. "What kind of man?" she asked, her voice betraying no hint of the turmoil that was beginning to brew within her. "Homeless, by appearance," the chief replied, a hint of confusion in his voice. "But ma'am, he just quoted the quantum signature frequencies for our primary communication array. Those numbers aren't public." Helena's curiosity was piqued. Despite the risk, she decided to take a chance. "Bring him up," she ordered, her tone brooking no argument. When Devon entered her office, Helena felt an unexpected jolt of recognition, not of his face, which was weathered and lined, but of the intensity in his eyes. Despite his disheveled appearance and the grime that spoke of a life lived on the streets, there was about him an undeniable air of authority. It was the kind of bearing that comes from years of commanding respect, of never having to question one's own brilliance. In that instant, Helena knew that this homeless man was no ordinary vagrant. There was something about him that was broken, brilliant, dangerous. And as he opened his mouth to speak, she braced herself for whatever revelation was about to unfold. "You're about to lose the entire grid," he stated flatly, pulling out a worn notebook. Helena watched, mesmerized as he turned the pages, his fingers trembling slightly. "The interference you're detecting isn't natural. Someone is mapping your defensive perimeter, and they're very good at it," he continued without looking up from his notes. Finally meeting his gaze, Helena found herself both unnerved and intrigued. "And you are?" she prompted, her voice betraying none of the turmoil that was beginning to brew within her. "Someone who helped design the system you're trying to save," he replied simply, still staring at his book. Setting it down, he leaned back, his eyes gleaming with a feverish intensity. "The quantum entanglement communicators on your satellites can be reconfigured to create a mesh network. Instead of independent targeting, they'll function as a single coordinated intelligence." As he explained his solution, sketching modifications on her whiteboard, Helena found herself drawn not only to his brilliant insights, but to the passion in his voice. It was clear that this man was a genius, a tortured genius who had somehow fallen from grace. But there was something else there too, a desperate need to redeem himself, to prove that he was more than his current circumstances. "How did you become entangled with such a system?" Helena asked softly, more to break the tension than because she was genuinely curious. He looked up sharply, his eyes filled with pain. "I was betrayed," he whispered, the word barely audible. "Framed for a crime I didn't commit. They took everything from me, my reputation, my career, my family. All I have now is this." He gestured at his notebook, his voice cracking with emotion. "But I won't let them destroy what I created. Not while I have a chance to stop it." Intrigued and increasingly convinced of Devon's sincerity, Helena made her decision. "How long?" she asked, her voice firm with newfound resolve. 6 hours for basic implementation, 12 for full optimization," he replied, his eyes shining with a newfound fervor. "Then do it," she said, knowing that she was about to trust this stranger with the fate of the world. As Devon got to work, Nix watched from orbit. What she observed was not just technically impressive, it was astonishing. The human solution was not only sound from a technical standpoint, but demonstrated an understanding of quantum mechanics that rivaled advanced Xanthari science. It was almost as if he were reading her mind, anticipating her every move. But that wasn't all that caught her attention. Nix found herself captivated by the interaction between the male engineer and the female leader. She observed the give and take, the subtle gestures, the unspoken understanding that passed between them. It was a dance as old as time itself, a dance of attraction that transcended species barriers. For the first time in her long and illustrious career, Nix began to entertain a new possibility, a future where first contact wasn't marked by conquest, where it was a bridge to something more, something extraordinary. The countdown to humanity's ultimate test had begun, and with it, the first stirrings of a love that would bridge not just two people, but two entire worlds.
As the sun rose, casting the desert facility in a golden light, Devon watched Nix, standing at the edge of the landing pad. Her back was to him, but he could feel her presence like a physical force. In the hours since the Xenatari had arrived, he'd seen incredible things. Their technology was a fusion of organic and mechanical, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And Nix was the perfect embodiment of that contradiction. 12.8 million kilometers away, deep in the war room of the Kethmori flagship, a single being dominated the vast chamber. It was a kaleidoscope of snapping mandibles, clicking limbs, and pulsing light. Its many eyes swept across the tactical displays, taking in information from 1,000 different sources. At its center, a single voice boomed. "Show me the humans, The image flickered, and the Kethmori saw what it wanted to see. Defenseless humans offering their planets as tribute. The plan was unfolding perfectly. The moment the Kethmori flagship reached the outer solar system, their probes had infiltrated Earth's communications, seizing control of every satellite and broadcasting station they could find. The invasion force had entered the atmosphere undetected, cloaking devices rendering them invisible to all but the most sophisticated radar arrays. As for those who had detected the invaders, well, there was always the EMP weapon. Now, as the Kethmori prepared to land, their weapons of biomechanical nightmares, ready to harvest the humans like some kind of bizarre crop, they didn't know they were being watched. Nix and Devon stood side by side as a fleet of Xenotari cruisers slipped out of hyperspace. The moment the Kethmori forces landed, they would move in and activate the EMP weapons. Without their cloaking devices, the Kethmori would be sitting ducks. Devon could see the predatory grace in Nix's posture, the way her hands twitched as if ready to strike. The Xenotari might be an empire of diplomats, but clearly they knew how to wage war. Just then, the ground beneath them rumbled. A massive ship emerged from the clouds, its hull scarred and pitted from countless battles. Zara stood at the front, her silhouette framed by the ship's bridge. Beside her, a figure that made Devon's blood run cold. Tall and skeletal, with skin like polished bone, the figure radiated an aura of death and decay. One clawed hand rested on a staff that pulsed with a sickly green light. The sight of the being sent a jolt of primal fear through Devon. This was the Kethmori commander, and it was radiating an energy signature that could only mean one thing: immense power. "It's time," Zara said, her voice tight with urgency. Devon nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. As the Kethmori flagship descended toward the surface, they were making a critical mistake. They had underestimated their enemy. The Xenotari might have come to claim Earth as their own, but they weren't prepared to leave without a fight. Devon felt the hum of power as the first Xenotari cruiser unleashed its EMP weapon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sky filled with light, as every cloaked Kethmori vessel was suddenly revealed. The humans had not been defenseless after all. "Fire the point! Defense cannons!" Nix ordered, her voice ringing with power. The battle was joined, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance.
As the Kethmori fleet approached, casting a long shadow over the earth, Devon felt a surge of pride mixed with an unfamiliar emotion. Fear. He hadn't felt this much in years. He tightened his grip on the controls, knuckles white against the black metal. Beside him, Helena ran a diagnostic on the hybrid weapon system, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Your mind works in fascinating patterns," Nix observed, their multiple appendages twitching in a way that was both alien and strangely hypnotic. "Most species think in linear progressions, but humans leap between concepts in ways that seem chaotic, yet produce elegant solutions." Devon smiled, feeling more alive than he had in years. Maybe chaos is just complexity we haven't learned to understand yet. The Kethmori were almost upon them, their massive ships blotting out the sun. But inside the Stellar Dynamics building, calm prevailed. Nix calibrated the weapon system's targeting, while Helena, her face pale but resolute, coordinated the global defense effort. Her natural leadership, honed by years of experience, was bringing the world's governments together in a way that Devon's technology could not. The raw power of the human spirit, she thought, watching as world leaders set aside their differences to focus on the common threat. It was inspiring, terrifying. Meanwhile, on the observation deck above them, Zara, her silver skin gleaming in the artificial light, kept watch over the battle that raged below. Her people, the Xenthari, were known for their crystalline computing and strategic brilliance, but it was all in service of what? Conquering this primitive planet? She had her doubts. These humans, for all their flaws, possessed a certain tenacity that was disarming. And then there was Devon, whose spirit, like a stubborn ember, refused to be extinguished. His courage, his resilience, it all resonated with a part of her that had long been dormant. As the battle reached its climax, Helena turned to Devon, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's almost over," she whispered, reaching out to touch his arm. In that brief moment of contact, something shifted between them. All the unspoken emotions, the longing glances, The shared purpose. It culminated in that one charged touch. But before either could act on it, the alarm blared, demanding their attention. Together they watched as the tide of battle turned. Devon's quantum mesh network, enhanced with Xanthari crystalline computing, was proving its worth. It tracked every enemy movement simultaneously, feeding data into Helena's tactical program, which responded to threats before they fully formed. The combined might of human and Xanthari forces pushed back against the darkness, giving hope where there had been only fear. But the Keth Mori were not without their own strengths. Their ships, though few in number, were formidable, their weapons devastating. Still, for the first time in galactic history, the Keth Mori encountered a defense they could not overcome. When the last enemy ship fell, the celebration was immediate and universal. Across the planet, humans and Xanthari embraced as allies who had faced the ultimate test together and prevailed. In the quiet aftermath, Devon and Helena stood on the observation deck of the Stellar Dynamics building, watching alien and human ships patrol the skies together. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities neither could have imagined alone. "So," Helena said, taking his hand, "about that thing you wanted to tell me." Devon pulled her close, no longer the broken man who had lived under a bridge, but not quite the polished engineer he had once been. He was something new, forged in crisis and tempered by love. "I lost everything once because I forgot what really mattered," he said softly. "I won't make that mistake again." Their kiss was witnessed by two worlds, human and Xanthari, who had learned that the strongest bonds are forged not in similarity, but in the courage to bridge differences with understanding, respect, and love. Above them, Nyx and Zara watched from their command ship, planning humanity's integration into the galactic community. They had come as potential conquerors and would leave as friends, having discovered that sometimes the greatest victories come not from showing strength, but from recognizing it in others. The stars belonged to all of them now, and love, it seemed, was indeed universal.